Are we starting?
We're live.
Hello! 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 Hello!
What are we doing? It's gonna make them run. Like, log off.
That's right.
It's not what we wanted to watch.
Nutty middle-aged women on a Tuesday night.
And it's a school night.
It's a school night, no less.
Yep.
Hello, everyone. We don't see any names yet logging in, but this is the Ontario Autism Coalition's live chat. And we're going to be talking about school. Let's talk about school, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about school.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The young, I don't know who's going to get
The
that
young,
reference.
no one's going to know. I know.
We
Because
don't
have any
we might be the oldest people.
sound.
No sound again.
No sound! Once again, no sound. I turned the speaker down.
You turn the speaker down?
Yes, I
Oh,
turned
dear.
on
Oh,
Janet's
this one?
computer.
Oh,
So there may be
there
sound.
may be sound.
Yes, I turned it down because so we wouldn't
Now
be
is
hearing
there
ourselves. I
Oh,
turned.
dear.
Oh, okay.
See?
Ah.
Okay.
All right.
Hello, Robert.
Hey, Robert. Thanks for letting us know.
Thank you, Robert. We see we have 5 people. We've been live for 1 minute and 30 seconds. And if you're watching this, you might want to fast forward a few minutes. We're just giving people, thank you, Robert. We're just giving people some time to log on. And we have 8 people so far. If you'll bear with us for maybe another 30 seconds, 1 minute, then we'll get started. We just want to give people a chance to log on.
Oh, I should hop out here because
Yes.
you're going to start by introducing our new OAC exec member, right?
Yes.
I'll be
So,
back.
so there's 4 of us in the room here.
Sure.
Melanie doesn't want to be on camera, but we're putting her on the
bad.
spot.
It's
she's
your
the best-
initiation.
That's right. She's the best looking person. See, she's the best looking person in this room. So this is Melanie Battaglia, and she's the newest executive member of our executive. And Melanie, do you want to say anything about yourself? What do you have to say for yourself, Melanie?
Yeah, I'm
Tell us.
She's a lawyer.
She's a lawyer.
She's
and
a lawyer.
verklempt.
She's super smart, right?
no. Wouldn't go that far.
And what is your role starting to be here in the OAC board?
Well, I'm new, I think, so I'm getting my feet wet as well in a lot of this, and I am a lawyer. I don't practice special education law or human rights. I do want to make that clear. I'm happy to assist in any way I can, but my specialty is more in family law. Yeah, I'm as I said, I'm getting my feet wet, and I'm really interested in working with Laura and everyone else on the board.
We're really lucky to have her. Really lucky
in
to have her.
education.
Yeah. So Melanie doesn't want to be on camera. She's going to be sitting off to the side and reading your comments and making sure that Laura and I behave ourselves. And I think we're ready to go. You're dismissed,
Yeah,
Melanie.
Thank you.
Poor Melanie. For lawyers, aren't they big show-offs? Aren't they? Okay.
That was fast.
Okay, don't be a goofball, Karen. All right, so hi everybody. We have 11 people. This is our live chat. Let's just get going.
Okay.
I've got a little preamble I'll read here so that you'll know what we're about, what we're planning on doing with this live chat. At any time, you are very welcome to type in your questions, type in your comments, and Melanie is going to make note of what you are asking about, what you would like discussed. This is Laura Kirby McIntosh.
Hello.
Say hello, Laura.
Hello, Laura.
Hello, Laura. Laura is our resident expert on education, and you will see why. I'm not going to list off her CV. You'll see. She's smart. We've got 2 smart women in here and 1 goofball. Okay, so welcome to our live chat. So there's Laura and Melanie. And before we begin, Melanie's going to put up a link to our education recommendation report for the Ministry of Education in Ontario. And if you haven't read it, check out that link, and you definitely want to highly recommend that you read this report. You may find some things applicable to you, okay? Please feel free to share this live broadcast with friends and any Facebook groups that you belong to. We welcome you to do that. We want to reach as many people as possible. I'm going to get Laura to tell us a little bit about the OAC, Ontario Autism Coalition, and what her role has been to date. We're going to talk about education today. We hope everybody's okay. First day of school down.
First day of school.
How many more days left?
I should know that number, but I don't.
Yeah.
But hey, if you're here and you're watching the Facebook Live, it means you survived the first day. So
Yes.
kudos to you,
Kudos
whether
to
you are
you.
a student, parent, or teacher.
And we hope you're all right. We hope you're all right. So we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly, as Laura sees it. Next, we'll go to some pre-submitted questions. Now, I should mention, we did this talk a month ago, and it didn't get saved. So I'm going to be reading some of the questions that that we did last time, because I think they're pertinent, and I think there's some people who really want this information. So there'll be some repetition. I apologize if that's boring to you, but we're going to do that. Finally, we're going to scroll through your questions and try our best to answer all the stuff that comes up in the live feed. We plan to do more of these live chats, and we have posted a poll about education that I hope that you will check out on our Facebook group as well.
Yeah, it's actually a survey, and I'll come back and I'll talk about that again later.
That later. Yeah. And so, please note, there are some issues that we're going to discuss today that might be upsetting. And most of us learn by osmosis over time. So if you're just getting your head around your child's diagnosis, if this was the first day of school for you ever, we may have some idea about what you're going through and how you're feeling. We are here to support each other, and that's what the OAC is all about. We may not be able to answer every question, especially if you ask a question that's very personal to your family, but Laura may be able to give you some resources that you can tap into. Okay, so Laura,
Hey!
who are the OAC?
The Ontario Autism Coalition is a grassroots political advocacy organization dedicated to improving the lives of people with autism and their families by advocating for evidence-based supports and services for our kids. We are a big, huge family on Facebook. We're over 3,000 strong. And so your first line of defense always, if you're encountering a barrier or you just want to vent or you want to ask a question, your first go-to spot is always the Facebook group, because there's a family of 3,000 people that can answer your question faster than I could possibly get to every single person that has one. And I want to encourage a system that's, I don't know, maybe we can formalize at some point later. But there are already people in this group who are experienced advocates and who have crossed over that threshold of going to their first meeting alone, really scared, really overwhelmed, not sure what to do, to, they've been at it for a few years. And I really want to encourage that model called Each One Teach One. So if you're a little further along in the journey, I want you to look over your shoulder and see who's back there that you can help. Who's another mom in this group where, you could go to their IEP meeting and just be a support person, just sit there and give them comfort and maybe take some notes. Or if you've got some skills in advocacy, who's out there that you could maybe go to their IPRC meeting and give them a hand, because that's how we get this done, is when we all help each other out.
So as you can see, much like her husband, Laura can talk. And I'm going to try to cut her off from time to time.
Busted.
Okay. Because we want to get to some issues, okay? So, Laura, why do you care so much about this stuff? And who the heck do you think you are?
Okay, so I'll start with the first. I think I'm a mom and a teacher, and a bit of a political hack. I don't think I know all the answers. I don't at all. In fact, the first thing that I'm going to do is point you towards the OAC resource page, or the Autism Ontario Education Advocacy page, or Ed Mahoney's page, and I'll ask Melanie from Karen's computer to post those links up. But those are sort of your first go-to sites. But I'm the mom of 2 kids on the spectrum, and I've had to fight pretty hard for their rights in the school system. And as an educator, I also sort of see the big picture here, and injustice doesn't sit too well with me, so I tend to fight.
We deal at the OAC with 2 different tiers of government, mostly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
One is MCYS, and the other is the Ministry of Education. Can you very briefly explain the difference between these 2 ministries? And that's it. What is the difference?
All right, I'm going to try to be really succinct here.
Really succinct.
Ministry of Education is anything to do with schools. Ministry of Children and Youth Services is anything to do with kids that is not schools.
Okay?
How's that?
There's a term that floats around in our community, and I would like Laura to explain what that is. What is PPM 140? What is that?
So it stands for Policy and Procedure Manual, and there's over 140 of them. There's literally hundreds of them. And these are policy statements that come out from the Ministry of Education, directed at school boards, telling them how certain things should be done. So it varies from topic to topic. PPM 140, though, is a document that's specific to autism, and it talks about how ABA strategies should be used when dealing with students with autism. So we fought for many years to get the government to open up to the idea of ABA in the classroom. I remember one Minister of Education who said, "No, but it can't be done. My experts have told me it can't be done." Hey, Sandra Pupatello, I'm looking at you. Yeah, I just called it a former Liberal cabinet minister. Oops. But anyway, PPM 140 happened, and so ABA started to happen in classrooms. Something that we advocate on is that the wording in PPM 140 is kind of weak. It has lots of what I call wiggle words, like should or may or where possible. And so we're lobbying the government right now to tighten that up.
Where can folks in the group read about PPM 140?
Looks like you just posted the link there, Karen.
How
about that? How is that happening?
With my mind, the power of my mind.
There you go. So there's links there. The Ministry of Education website is not the worst one to try to navigate. So I encourage you to spend some time on there. And just actually, while we're on the subject, a shout out to our homeschoolers, because I know that there are some people in the group that are homeschooling. So there's lots of resources to support you there. Obviously, you start with the curriculum documents, but there's way more than that. And if anybody in the group knows some good homeschooling websites, please send them up our way.
Great. Okay, so let's move on to parent questions. Let us know if we're speaking too quickly. Let us know if you can't hear us. We are cognizant of the time. It's already 13 minutes in, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So let us know if we're babbling. Let us know if we're repeating ourselves too much. Thank you for your questions, everybody. There's some great ones. This one from Kathy. Right at the very beginning of school, does my child have to be potty trained to go to school?
Nope.
Nope. What happens if a school sends your kid home or calls you to change a diaper?
Really, it's up to you to sit down and work out some sort of system for that. I've had my kids sent home, and sometimes that's really the easiest way to deal with it. But if it's happening on an ongoing basis and you know that toileting is difficult because your child is on the spectrum, then really you need to sit down with the team and work out a system. They can't come home every time they have a pee accident. You're going to need to send some changes of clothes, and then you're going to have to work out the details of who's going to be responsible for that.
What about diaper changing?
Well, it's something that can be done for students with physical disabilities who can't go to the washroom. Mm-hmm. I see no reason why it can't be done for students with autism.
I had no issues with my kid was not potty trained until the end of senior kindergarten, and there were no issues with the teacher, with the EAs. Yeah. Everybody changed him.
Yep. You just
was
deal
no
with it.
issue.
Oh, just want to point out that one of our youth advisory committee chairs is online. So if you'd like to ask a question to a young man with autism who not only survived the school system but came out doing really well for himself, Nico Van Speck is. I hope I'm saying that right, Nico. Is online, so feel free to direct questions to him. Hi,
Hello,
Brent.
Miko. Nice to meet you. Hi, Brent. How do I start the process of getting support for my child?
Well, I'm imagining that most of you that are watching started that process back in the spring and May and June, probably checking out the school, or certainly you've been in the last week trying to lay that groundwork. But you really start by having those first transition meetings. So the transition process is a whole other topic. But if your kid is just, if you move to a new neighborhood, you're randomly starting grade 3. Then the first step is really go in, meet the principal. Everything starts from the principal. Get on a good relationship with the principal. But you know what, actually, I'm going to say before the principal, the main office secretary is the key holder to everything in that school. Never, ever be rude to a secretary or a custodian in a school. They secretly run the places and they know everything that's going on. So always be as cordial and as friendly as you can. First contact with the principal, again, always be as friendly and cordial as you can. Ed Mahoney talks a lot in his advocacy materials about how, when we as parents get emotional in meetings and we yell and we cry and we scream, sometimes that can sabotage us, particularly if it comes too soon.
Who's Ed Mahoney?
Ed Mahoney is a professional education advocate. We can drop his website link into the chat there. So he's somebody that you can hire to go with you to school meetings or to give you advice on a school situation. And he's somebody that's worked in the system, has given a lot of workshops, and
so there are some people who are professional advocates who will, if you got the dough.
Well, that's the challenge, right? If you've got the
more money. Yeah,
if you've got the money, there's lots of people out there who would love to take it from you and say, hire me, I'll be your educational consultant. Here we try to provide you with resources for free and sort of draw on that collective knowledge. But the first point of contact is usually an Iprc meeting, which stands for Individual Placement and Review Committee. And that's where the school team will sort of look at your kids' reports and say, based on everything that we've got so far, we think this type of classroom would be best. And there are 5 different settings. And so that's usually the first meeting, is figuring out which classroom.
Okay, so you said 5 different settings of classrooms. What are these different settings?
Oh boy, I'll see if I can rhyme them all off by, I can't. But one would be a full integration with occasional withdrawal support. One would be a completely segregated special ed classroom. And there's lots of spaces sort of in between. You might do a half day in and a half day out. So these are all listed on the Ministry of Education's website, and I can post the 5 different placements. But no, I'm going to get ahead of myself if I start talking about that. I'll stop.
Okay, good. So we have a survey that we'll mention again. But one of the things that we've noticed is people have commented that their children do not have EAs, educational assistants, in their classrooms. And this question from Kathy, another one from Kathy, what are the considerations into assigning an EA to a child rather than a class?
It's interesting, and you raised something here that we've actually put into our education survey. And I'll come back and remind me to talk about that survey again later. But there's a variety of considerations. The short answer is there's a lot of you out there today struggling because your kid needs a one-on-one EA and they're not getting it. And the principal is telling you things like, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough staff, we can't assign that EA to your individual child. We can only assign it to a classroom, and then it's a shared EA. There's a variety of challenges. There's a massive shortage of EAs. Clearly, there's not enough in the system. And the union that represents them, QP, is advocating really hard on this. And I'd urge you to look at their website and their subpages on education assistance. There's some good stuff there. But yeah, some principals will use that excuse that no, the EA isn't assigned to your kid in particular. It's just assigned to the classroom. And if somebody else needs their attention, then we're going to leave your child and go to that child. Do we want to talk about how to fight for?
Let's
more
get to
EA
that.
services?
Let's get to that.
Okay.
We do know some of you, many of you watching, likely. Beth says EA allocation classroom versus students depends on boards.
Right.
Beth is right.
Yep. And that's one of the recurring themes tonight is going to be the frustration. Thank you, Heather. Yeah, it's not just QP. There's a variety of different ones. I just mentioned them because they're the one that represents the largest number of EAs, but there's also OPSU and there's other local unions that represent EAs. Board to board, it may be different. And EA allocation can be different from board to board, and that's really frustrating for parents. But in terms of how to fight for one, here's how I would frame it. And I saw somebody posting today, and this comment is sort of directed right at them. You submitted paperwork that your child needs an EA. There's psychological reports that say your child is a flight risk or is a behavioral risk that may that may hurt themselves, may be self-injurious in the classroom. They may hurt others if their sensory needs aren't being met. And all of those things are there in front of the school, and then the school still says, no, they can't have an EA. Katie, I think you can certainly ask for an EA in junior kindergarten, but what do you know about that? Karen? Were you able to get one for your guy?
No, not individually. There was Charlie was in a diagnostic kindergarten. There was a teacher, an EA, and several students who were studying to be ECEs.
Right.
It was a very well set up classroom, I have to say. But I fully aware of how lucky we were, and subsequently we were not so lucky. I learned the hard way.
It can change.
It can change in a different school.
Oh, Heather, that's a useful comment. Okay, so yes, some people have had one-to-one support in kindergarten. I just want to give one tip to people that are going to have to go toe-to-toe this week with school staff that are reluctant to give them that one-to-one EA that their kid needs. Here's how I would frame it. If you've put all of that information in front of the school that this is what your kid needs, and they agree that's what your kid needs, but they're oh so sorry they can't possibly afford it, what I would do is I would have my buddy with me in the meeting, writing notes, and I would say, okay, so before we go any further, I just want to know something because I'm going to need my friend Karen to write it down because my memory is terrible. But when my son goes missing and he leaves school property, or when my daughter injures herself because she's not being supervised by the one-to-one EA that I asked you guys for, when those injuries or those incidents happen, who shall I write down as being liable for that? And tough. Just let that word of liability really hang in the room, because none of us want to wait. None of us want to wait until our kid goes missing or gets hurt. But we really have to make it clear to boards that, to principals, that they need to take this up the chain of command, which we'll talk about.
What happens, a lot of people will start out the school year with supports in place and SNA and EA, and then suddenly have them yanked and sent to another school. What do you do?
When your kid just gets bounced? Or when the EA gets bounced?
When the EA gets bounced.
Oh, no one's going to like my answer to this. Allocations for EAs and teachers are based on teacher and EA contracts. Teacher contracts are a really messy business. EAs, pretty much the same. There are some issues that are bargained provincially. There's some that are bargained locally. And then what you have is you have movement in the system. So people retire, people enter the system, people get sick, people move. And as a result, EAs and teachers get changed at the last minute all the time. Yeah, Robert, yes, they do. So sadly, when an EA gets bounced, often there is nothing you can do. There's no appeal mechanism to go, hey, that EA was a really great match for my kid. I will tell you, in talks with QP leadership, they hate that as much as we do in a lot of ways, that they wish that they could be paired with a kid when it's, I don't know, there's got to be room in a contract to say, you know, if the parent and the kid and the EA and the principal all agree that it's a good fit, there really should be a way to get around the contract things and the issues of seniority that bog that down. Yeah,
a lot of heartbreak out there, eh? When someone gets attached to their EA and then suddenly they're gone.
Yeah.
That brings me to Elizabeth Hay Chambers' questions, relates, I think. Who oversees that an IPRC decision is enforced?
Again, you're not going to love the answer on this, but really, it's you. So much, and this is true also of IEPs, that you are, as a parent, as a mom or a dad, you are your child's first and best advocate. And it's exhausting. You know, we long to be those parents that get to drop the kids off and just wave.
We're both 26 years old. That's how exhausting it is.
See this face?
Look at us.
But yeah, you know, I'm the same as any other autism mom, right? You know, I see my kid in the schoolyard, and then there's all these parents that just send their kid into the building, and then they go to work and they don't think about it for the rest of the day. What the hell is that like? I have no idea.
That's a magic trick.
Yes.
Melanie's stopping us.
No, I guess Brent's answer is right.
Yes, the legal document needs to be adhered to, but if you don't call them out, they don't know. Angela is right as well. Get involved with your SEAC, Special Education Advisory Committee. Every board has one, and it's a group of people that represent a variety of different special needs organizations that advise the board on anything to do with spec ed. I've been told that an IPRC are only for CERT support. Is that true? Special education, whatever. No, and Rachel, IPRC is a placement committee. So it's when they decide what type of class your kid is going to be in. What type of support they get inside that class is a different issue, and is sometimes discussed at the IPRC meeting, sometimes discussed later. But hey, another thing, if your kid is a runner, make sure, or has any trouble with aggression or behavior, make sure you have a safety plan. And you may have to go in and ask, and maybe they haven't written too many before, but a safety plan is another legal document that, God forbid, should anything happen, you can refer back to. And it lists, you know, we had one for one of our boys that was like 8 pages long. And it was, here's all of his triggers. Here's what it looks like when he's triggered. Here's what it looks like when he's getting agitated, when he's moving into the danger zone. Here's what it looks like when he's lost control. Here's what works. Here's what doesn't work. Here's what you may do. Here's what you may not do in terms of restraint, for instance. And then that document becomes something else.
I'm going to stop her because I want to move on. Sorry. No, don't. Never apologize. Don't apologize. But we're only on our second question, essentially, right? So, and we're 30 minutes in. Lisa. Lisa asks, can we discuss how boards are perpetuating the myth that a strong needs assessment isn't necessary on an IPRC? This is relating to what Laura was talking about. It seems that some boards are fooling parents into believing that it is not the role of the IPRC to include a needs statement that incorporates the supports and services required by a child. This isn't accurate info if you look at the Ministry of Education documents, and professional advocates have advised so as well. I realize that it isn't the entire answer to the problem, but by not putting the needs in an IPRC, it feels like boards are purposefully dodging their legal accountability. Thank you, Lisa. It's a great question or comment.
And Lisa is a great resource in her own right. I have her permission, as well as one other mom, Kristen Ellison. If you have questions about school and your kid is nonverbal, they are two great parents, Lisa and Kristen, to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
But Lisa, thanks for the question and the comment. I really want to urge parents out there to be cognizant of the fact that everything begins and ends with the statement of needs. What your child needs is non-negotiable, and it's based on assessment, it's based on data, it's based on your knowledge of your kid. Your kid needs what they need. If they need one-on-one support and the school doesn't provide that, well, they're leaving themselves wide open, aren't they? If your child needs a sensory break on a regular basis, if your child needs assistive technology and then the school doesn't provide that, well, everything falls in dominoes from that.
Or a support dog?
Or an autism assistance dog.
An autism assistance dog.
Aye. Another issue.
Another issue.
Shout out to the fees.
Yeah.
Beth makes a good point.
Yes.
For parents in center-based ABA services, bring your child's BCBA senior therapist
Yes.
to meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you have the right to take somebody with you to a meeting, and you don't have to tell them in advance who that person is. They don't tell you in advance sometimes who's coming to the meeting, and then they pull a power tactic, like they fill the room with lots of bodies of people with fancy clipboards and things to intimidate you. You bring your own team, and as Beth is suggesting there, if you want to have somebody from the provincial advocate's office, I mean, save that for like when you need to go big guns, but when the provincial advocate gets involved, whoo, doors open. But your ABA therapist, your BCBA, even just the day-to-day therapist that works with your kid, have them come and share their professional knowledge.
Yeah.
But
Myra asks,
needs
sorry,
everything. Go.
you're not going to be mad at me for cutting you off, right?
No.
Okay, so
I
Myra
deserve it.
asks, how do we create appropriate SMART goals for the IEP? Well, first of all, what is an IEP?
Okay, so we got to go through the acronyms here. The IEP is the Individual Education Plan. Miko was commenting earlier about the fact that he had a really good one and that helped him. So once you get the IPRC, once you get the placement, then you have to get the Individual Education Plan in place. So what is the plan for how this child is going to be educated because they have special needs? Now let me, you're going to hate me for going off topic, but
I'm not. Are we speaking too quickly, everyone? Is it easy to follow us?
give us a thumbs up if
we're
it's
just-
okay.
we're just
a
in a-
thumbs down if we're too fast.
We're just in a basement in our secret
Just
bunker.
wait. Someone is saying, I am able to follow the comments, no audio or video.
Oh,
What?
no audio or video? Oh.
Oh, no, you guys can all hear
You
us.
can all hear us and you
Some
can
of
follow
us.
us. Some.
A flower!
Are we making anybody angry?
wow.
Did we make somebody angry?
There was an angry emoji there.
Oh.
Oh, there's no one. Oh,
no.
sorry.
We don't mean to
Are
make
you
anyone
angry
angry.
because there's no sound?
Why are you angry?
What is that logo?
That's a thumbs up.
Oh, it's a
You're
thumbs
not-
up. Okay.
You're not getting any
No, we're not getting,
feed.
we can't see the
Oh,
updated feed, so you gotta tell us.
Oh, Melanie, see, we're
Okay.
actually don't see the feeds.
Okay.
Oh,
Alright.
another
Nothing
angry
here.
person.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
you know, that's
Okay.
okay.
So maybe angry because we wandered off topic.
Maybe.
IEPs and SMART goals. So
Right.
the plan is the document where you list all of the special techniques that are going to be used to educate your child that may be considered non-traditional. So if your kid has low vision, they might need to be seated front of the class. That's an accommodation. It would go in an IEP. If your kid has huge sensory issues, then they may say, you know what, preferred seating is somewhere in a corner of the room where it blocks off the sound a little bit. If your child needs projects to be chunked into manageable pieces, that's an accommodation. So it's a list of the strengths and needs of the students, and then the teaching accommodations that are going to be used, and then the assessment accommodations that are going to be used as well. Because as kids get older and their marks start to be more of a thing, you want to make sure that they're being marked fairly. So if they require extra time for an exam in high school, for instance, that goes into the IEP.
Okay.
So the best thing to do when you're setting goals for the IEP and you're saying this year, these are the things that we really want our kid to work on, you want to avoid being vague and just say, well, I'd like Johnny to work on his social skills. All right, well, what does that mean? A SMART goal is, help me out please, it is specific, it's measurable, it's, what's the A? Achievable. It's, the R is, oh help, realistic, and the T is time bound. So instead of saying Johnny's going to improve his social skills, you could say Johnny is going to initiate conversation at recess twice a week by the end of November. And that's a SMART goal.
Yeah.
And your BCBAs and all your whole ABA team, SMART goals is the only thing they do.
Yeah.
So they're really good at helping write them.
Yeah.
P.S. There's a ton of resources on things to put in IEPs. You really only need to Google and to get some ideas. Don't take the IEP that they give you unless you helped write it and it's based on the one from last year. But if they just give you a generic IEP and it's like 2 pages long, throw that crap out, sit down and actually invest the time into writing that IEP thoroughly, because that's a living legal document. And it's something that you can go to the teachers with later if they're not meeting your kids' needs and say, but wait a second, it's in the IEP, you're supposed to give them extra time for this project. So you can't give them a 0 for handing it in late. And so on.
Melanie's going to interject.
I am, because Laura makes, I think, a very good point, and I know this is not in your question.
It's all right. Come on.
But I think she makes a good
Melanie.
point about enforceability or accountability.
Yes.
That I wanted you to say,
Okay.
because I want you to talk about that.
Okay.
Because you're talking about an IEP, but you could even back that up one step further. Why do I need an IPRC, right?
Yes.
Because of the accountability. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So if your child isn't identified as being an exceptional student, then they're not entitled to that special kind of placement, and they won't necessarily have an IEP put in place. But once you've got a kid identified with exceptionality, there's a whole bunch of legal things that kick in. So the placement is the first part, and the IEP is the second part. And then the battle, the ongoing battle, and I don't need to tell the parents that are watching, is the enforcement. Is making sure that that placement continues on an ongoing basis to be the most appropriate, and that the IEP is actually being used and being referred to.
Laura, how long have you been advocating for your son?
Since he was in daycare. Okay. Do you want me to tell that story?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I
All
do.
right. I know which story she wants me to tell. Okay. This is the story of how special needs moms and dads, but let's be real, mostly moms, get their reputation as being big, scary, evil mamas. And I want to just say this to acknowledge the fact that we are all ferocious mama bears and papa bears, and we advocate for our kids so hard for so long that sometimes it's the only thing that we know how to do.
Yeah.
So my guy was diagnosed at 3. At age 5, he was in a daycare, and I noticed that one by one, all the backpacks and the hooks and the cubbies were being changed, and kids in his class were moving to another class, and he wasn't moving. And well, we just formed the OAC, and we were ready to fight for more autism supports, and I smelled discrimination, by God. All these other kids were moving up to the preschool room, but not our boy. So I armed myself with, a copy of the Day Nurseries Act and like some other law or whatever, because I'm a nerd. And I call up the director of the YMCA daycare and subject her to my full fury and say, you're holding my son back, I can tell. And she stops me and she's like, Mrs. McIntosh, it's not that at all. We don't move them up until they turn 5, and your son hasn't turned 5 yet, so we'll move him up when it's his birthday. And I had to do one of those, whoa, crap, I need to dial it back.
Yeah.
So just a note that, if you've ever gone too hard and then regretted it, don't feel bad. You're not alone.
Yeah.
But sometimes we've been fighting so much for our kids that it's all we know how to do. Never underestimate the power of a double and a box of Timbits at your kid's IEP meeting. or, you know, if you're the good mom that I aspire to be, a nice veggie tray and gluten-free crackers and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm acknowledging that most teachers and most EAs are really trying to do their best.
Yeah.
And giving them a little caffeine.
Yeah.
goes
And
a long way.
we hit the ground running, you know, talking tough. And, and a lot of us get backed into a corner, and that does end up happening. We try our best. We try our best to advocate for our children, and we at the OAC, we are human beings. We're hopefully decent people trying to raise our kids, and hopefully we are trying to appeal to the community to be the best, to be their best for our children. And we're not out to throw anybody under the bus. So we are covering a lot of information, and we're throwing a lot of stuff at you, and some of you may be overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed, and I think I'm starting to understand this stuff. So Melanie has another comment.
Sure.
Please.
Yeah, Mika.
Miko. We cannot see the comments, but Melanie can. That's why we're whispering around. Melanie is going to read a comment.
Mikau just says, I attended my IEP meetings in high school with my parents, and I think that's a really important point.
Thanks for
and
the
he
reminder.
brings Dr. Pepper because he doesn't drink coffee.
You just drink So you, always the drink that you need to get through the meeting.
Yes.
And then, you know, whatever else you want to share. But Miko's made a really good point.
Yes.
We talk a lot in the OAC and we talk a lot in schools about presuming competence, which is some language that some of you would do well to share with the teachers there. But just because a kid is nonverbal doesn't mean they're not intelligent. Just because a kid has behavioral challenges doesn't mean they're not intelligent. And my own sons have taught me this over and over again. Just when I think, you know, oh, they wouldn't possibly want to go to this meeting or this event, or they wouldn't be able to handle it, they can handle it. And I would say as soon as you think there's even a possibility of your child being able to participate in an Iprc or an IEP meeting, bring them. And actually, let me rephrase that. You know what? If you're sure that they're not ready to sit through a meeting, bring them anyway. Why should you and the classroom teacher in EA be the only ones that get to experience the full force of your kid's charisma?
It can make a big point.
It really can. I mean, I'm not for setting our kids up for suffering. I'm really not a fan of that. But I really think, you know, my two kids are very strong self-advocates, in part because we brought them to the table as soon as possible. And the number of times where they just stopped meeting cold and said, actually, no, I want this, and stopped us in our tracks too, right?
Yes.
Sometimes as parents, we presume we know what our kids want, and we don't always, and they can speak for themselves. Thank you very much.
Exactly. I want to push on to a slightly different bent here from Georgina. How long are wait times for professional referrals, i.e. psych ed reports from a school psychologist? I have heard some kids being denied or told not to bother seeking assessments till next year, others being waitlisted a year, and others getting assessments within a couple of months, all within the same school board.
Crazy.
Who gets priority treatment and why? Good question, Georgina.
So you sort of took the wind out of one of the, never mind, that metaphor just completely got away from me. Ignore it. I'm going to start over. So the first thought that I had was that wait times obviously vary board to board, but then you're talking about the TDSB, which is a massive behemoth of bureaucracy. So you have variations even from school to school. Whenever somebody tells you don't bother applying for that wait list, apply anyway. Because if the wait list has gotten so big that they don't think it's worth your time, and then you don't apply, the wait list gets lower. And then they start to think that they're actually meeting the need and they've got enough staff.
Yeah.
It's not unless that wait list grows that they will hire more psychologists to do more reports.
Very
But
good point.
same thing, like if you're applying for special services at home funding and they say, oh, don't bother, there's no, apply anyway. And if you don't get anything, appeal anyway. Don't ever take somebody's word for it that it's not worth it to apply. I modify that by saying if it comes from another parent in the community, maybe listen to that. But professionals usually have an agenda when they say that.
Yes. I've just learned something now too. I had kind of, I have such a great private speech SLP that, with all due respect, the TDSB's SLP, somebody seeing him once every few months, I figured, who cares, right? But I should have, and I will now, ask for that service.
Yeah.
So that they're aware that there are children that are in need.
Also, the other answer that Georgina knows in her heart is true. Who gets priority? It's squeaky wheels, baby.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've all got to be squeaky wheels. And it isn't until we all are, like across the province, clamoring for the supports that our kids need that we're really going to get it. I see Samantha's question there about if the school isn't following the legal documents, can you contact the superintendent of your school? Yes. Samantha, I want to talk a little bit about the chain of command in schools, because there's times to respect it and then there's times to kind of go around it. So obviously, classroom teacher and EA are your first point of contact. Some schools, elementary schools, don't even have a vice principal, but sometimes a VP, if there is one, can be a really good ally, particularly if you don't get along with the principal. Sometimes you can form a relationship with the vice principal. Outside of the school, there's superintendents for groups of schools. It's usually like 4 elementary schools and a high school, and you have a superintendent for that group. Then you also have superintendents that have special designations. So you may want to get in touch with a superintendent of special education. And then you're climbing all the way up to like the trustees. And that's somebody, like those are elected officials that you can go to for help sometimes. They can be useful.
So what's the pegging order? Teacher,
an EA, vice principal, principal, superintendent of schools, superintendent of special ed are both sort of at that level. I don't know if trustees would think that they were lower or higher than superintendents.
They think they're higher.
They think they're higher, so let's put them there. And then you can go right up to the director of education and senior board staff. It's a good idea, if you haven't already done so, to visit the website for your school board and just poke around it and just know what's there and where to find things. They can be massive bureaucracies, but better to know them.
Melanie, you were going to say something?
No, sorry.
Okay. Advocate to ensure that EAs have access to all the information. Thank you, Tracy. That's so important. Often the teacher gets the IEP and the education assistant doesn't. You know, and if you are lucky enough to get an EA, do everything you can to foster that relationship, because that person is your lifeline. Yeah.
Brent, sorry, Laura.
Go ahead. Yes.
You guys have old.
Yeah, we have old comments.
Yeah, Brent has a question. How much power does a trustee have over school decisions?
Melanie asks, a little louder?
Yes, sorry. How much power, this is Brent's question, how much power does a school trustee have over decisions?
That's a really interesting question. In terms of political power, I'm not necessarily sure that they can go into a school and force anything to happen, but they can vote for resolutions at their school trustee meetings. So, I mean, a trustee is someone that you can get involved in your kid's individual situation in some cases. I did once when we were dealing with a principal that just was a brick wall. And it was a way to sort of come at the principal from the outside as well. The other thing, you know, because you all have nothing else to do, but school councils are also really good. Like if you really have nothing else to do, join the school council. It's a great way to get to know the principal, to get to know the other parents, for them to see a special needs parent in their midst, not just the the parents that we're all silently stereotyping in our mind.
Yeah, that was my philosophy that I found a lot of success with, is just to be a part of the school body. Even though in my heart it actually was painful to go to parent council meetings and hear all of the energy that people were putting into the price of licorice and stuff like that. It was painful, to be honest with you. But I wanted to be a representative of my child's classroom. I wanted to show that I'm a team player and I'm a nice person and all that stuff, and a reasonable person. So that's a great way to get to know people, and it did pay off. It does pay off for me, although it costs something too. I know.
It does, but schools at the end of the day are small communities.
Yeah.
And every community has different pockets of it, but anytime that you can come into that community and make sure that your kid is visible in that community. And that means, not staying home from the holiday assembly because you think your kid might be loud. You know what? There are loud people in communities, and we need to learn how to get along and how to normalize that.
And if other parents care about your children, it's all the better. It's all the better for everyone.
Yeah.
It's all the better. Okay. Melanie, you want to say something?
Valerie has what I think is a good question.
Okay, Valerie's question.
Can you request that people working with your child, such as an EA, OT, or SLP, be added to the IEP specifically and name them if the school doesn't include them?
Interesting. Can you request that other people be added to the IEP if the school didn't put them on there to begin
outside of the school system, like private practitioners?
She doesn't specify, but let's say yes.
Okay.
Let's say that.
You know what? I come from the philosophy of you can request anything. I'd like to request that all of the kids get, free laptops and snoozling rooms in every school. So let's request everything. But on a practical level, I don't know of any legal mechanism that allows them to refuse. It's a statement in the IEP that just says the following people were consulted in the development of the IEP. Well, if you brought the BCBA to the meeting, then they were consulted. Their name should go on.
And I think too, maybe her point is to consult with such people on an ongoing basis, right?
Right. We can encourage that in an IEP, and we can certainly encourage teachers and EAs to contact those people when they're having difficulties. I really want to talk honestly about the school, the speed of a school. I don't know if this will make sense unless you've worked in one, but the first few weeks are kind of slow. Things are getting going, and that's the time to get in there and to say, here's the name of a BCBA who knows my kid like the back of their hand. When you're running into difficulties, call this person, because your kid's teacher is still organized enough and well rested enough from the summer to be able to file that somewhere where they won't lose it. By late November, we are buried in report cards and assessment and evaluation and staff meetings that we don't want to go to. And the time to get in there, these next few weeks, guys, are really crucial to get in there and share information while your teachers and EAs are still able to receive it and they're not feeling overwhelmed.
This is a bit of a sidestep. Georgina asked another really good question. So some of you are just starting school. Some of you your children are still in service, but their end date is coming up. And so Georgina's question is about transitioning out of service. She says, it's a can of worms.
Yeah, it is.
As we heard the Minister of Ed proudly speak about the transition process, I remember that too, Georgina, we realized that she believes it is a success because that's what she's probably told. The reality is, when the important transition team member, being the new teacher, gets all this training about your kid, but fails to implement it or transfer knowledge and materials to the new teacher in September.
How do you fight that?
So I think she's pointing out how complex this can be. So let's say your kid was released from service in May
Yeah.
of 1 year, and the transition team trained up the new teacher
In September.
and then in September, voila, new teacher, new grade.
Yeah.
So none of that made it through to the teacher who will be really working with your child.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I'm sure some of you tonight are freaking out because of last minute changes on your kid's timetable, or a teacher that you thought they were going to have and they're not going to have, and that kind of craziness always happens. But the Ontario Autism Coalition Education Survey, which just came out earlier last week, is starting to bring in data about transition programs, and we're already seeing a very high level of dissatisfaction with the Connections program. And
okay, so quickly,
yeah,
what is the Connections program?
So the Connections program is a program that is supposed to be used to help transition kids with autism from the OAP into the school system.
OAP is?
Oh dear, sorry. Somebody was saying earlier, can we have a list of all the acronyms? Yes. Actually, I have a really good list of acronyms,
Okay.
and if somebody can just email me and remind me to post them, I will.
Okay.
So the OAP is the Ontario Autism Program. So if your kid was getting intensive ABA, 15, 20, 25 hours a week, then they're going into school, that requires some transition readiness.
Right. So that's MCYS
meets
or
EDU.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah. 2 different ministries, 2 different funding models, 2 pillars.
Yeah. And one of the hardest institutional things that we're fighting right now in the OAC is to tear down the barrier between the children and youth ministry and the education ministry, and to get them to work together so that when a kid is in the autism program and moving into school, that's a seamless transition.
And the Connections program, that's sort of what they're supposed to do, is what Georgina was.
Yeah, but they really don't. And often, the people that would be best placed to do that transition would be the people that are delivering the autism program to the child. If they could come straight in to the school and sit at those first IEP meetings and say, we've been working with this kid for 8 months, 2.5 years. We have a whole bunch of data. Here it is. Here's what the kid likes. Here's what they don't like. Here's what they respond to. That would be wealthy information.
That just
to give
seems
to the
to
school.
make a whole lot of sense, Laura.
Okay, but this is something, well, yeah, I'm going to say it. If you're looking for logic in school bureaucracies, it's going to be frustrating for you. There's a lot of things that are overcomplicated. The service dog issue is one. So you say that again? So you say, don't look for logic in educational bureaucracies. Just don't.
Just don't.
Just
don't
quit
throw it away.
Stop it.
Yeah. You'll save yourself hours of sleepless nights. Don't look for logic.
I mean, that's my cynical voice talking. We're getting laughs and tears and anger. I know. All of the emotions. All of the emotions. We even got flowers for that. So I guess I'll qualify the statement. Don't look for logic. Teach the schools logic, because they're so deep into it sometimes that they can't see it. So for instance, when our son was first taking his service dog to school, and we had more meetings about poo than I can possibly explain to you. Who's going to pick up the poo? What if Clifford doesn't pick up the poo? It's not my job to pick up the poo. Are you going to pick up the poo? Are you going to pick up the poo? Who's going to pick up the poo? Oh my God. Meanwhile, we would say, okay, there's 800 kids that go to this school. I'm guessing somewhere in your grade 7 or 8 class, there's a kid that really loves dogs. Or there's a kid somewhere in this building that is dying to be able to pet this dog, but they can't because they're in vest. And you say to that kid, you want some volunteer hours so that you're the one that takes out the dog, takes them off vest when they're going for recess. Now you have to pick up the poo. The kid's going to be like, I have 2 dogs. I love dogs. Like, there are reasonable solutions to things.
Yeah, sometimes the simplest one, right?
The simplest one that's right there.
Right there under our noses.
Yeah.
Melanie, you were gonna interject?
No.
No? Okay. She just looked like she was gonna say something. I wanted, this is a tough one. Tara has asked a question about exclusion.
Yeah.
So she's not the only one. We can't really talk specifically about one person and one person's challenges. It really wouldn't be ethical. We're not qualified. We don't know people individually, and certainly this would not be the forum to spout off our personal opinions on what someone shouldn't do or should do.
Mm-hmm.
But there are children who are excluded from school. Laura's son missed school for 6 months. Is that correct?
Yeah.
At one point, what happened there?
Well, so I want to define a couple of terms, and the first is voluntary withdrawal, and the second is exclusion. So if you've ever had your child's school call you, sometimes at 9:30 in the morning, the kid's only been there for half an hour, and say, excuse me, your child is having some sort of incident, behavioral challenge, they've had a meltdown, we need you to come to the school immediately, pick them up and take them home. And, you may be sitting at your desk going, well, I kind of have a job, I can't just leave. And please, if you are a stay-at-home parent, resist the urge to go when they call you to say, please come and pick up your kid. Because when they call and ask, there is no documentation. They don't have to fill out any forms. It's not like if they suspend a kid, they have to document everything. If they ask you to come and pick up your kid and you do, there's no record of it. And often what happens is you reinforce the behavior. So, Johnny goes to school. Johnny doesn't like school because it's big and loud and noisy. Johnny throws a couple of things. Johnny's mom comes and picks him up and takes him home. Johnny's like, oh, so if I need to go home, that's what I do. You just reinforce the behavior.
Classic ABA.
Right? Really basic. So as hard as it is, you say, no, I'm not going to come and pick the kid up. So that's voluntary withdrawal. It often happens also in really rude ways where they'll ask you to keep your kid home from a field trip and say, but we can't support your kid on this field trip. So unless you come, we can't do anything, or for assemblies and those types of things. Now, exclusion is another beast altogether. If your kid, and many of our kids do go through challenges with aggression, not all of them, but many of them do. And as schools struggle to deal with that, they're really confused. So a lot of schools overreact, and I'll warn some of you guys that the next few things I say may be triggering for those of you that have gone through this, but schools will sometimes restrain the kid. They will sometimes call police. And then, things get really out of hand really quickly. Exclusion is when the principal basically says you are not allowed to send your kid to school because we can't support them and we can't keep them safe, or we can't keep the other people in the building safe if your child is here. The thing that I want to make clear to the one person that I know is really struggling with this is that just because the school principal has excluded your kid does not absolve the board from their responsibility to provide a free and public education for your child. So if they're saying, we can't serve you at this school, you have to go back and say, all right, well, what are you going to do instead? Which is exactly what I did when they did this to our son. Is we said, okay, so you say the word exclusion. I hear that, and I hear that there's nothing I can do about it. I'm very angry about it, but what else are you going to do? And so we had, for a time, we had a teacher that came to the house and provided lessons, but we had to fight tooth and nail to get him back into a school setting. Ultimately, it was what's called a Section 23 class, which is something that a lot of you may be familiar with. Section 23 of the Education Act allows schools to set up specialized classrooms to deal with kids that don't do well in mainstream classrooms. So it can be a class for kids with behavioral exceptionalities. It can be a class of students inside a youth detention center. It can be a specialized class for kids with autism. So Section 23 has a lot of flexibility, and ultimately we were able to find an appropriate fit there for our guide. But not until I quoted chapter and verse from the Education Act, the Human Rights Act, ministry policies on educating kids with autism. Exclusion is a nasty beast. And, you know, if things get to that stage, then it's time to bring in the reinforcements and call a professional educational advocate, call the provincial advocate for children and youth, call Arch Disability Law. There's a number of really great resources. And actually, I want to publicly thank Melanie. She put together, within like a month of joining our board, a fantastic document on legal advocacy resources for parents.
Where can we find that document?
I think it's up on the resources page, and she's going to post it again right there in the links.
It's on the 3 Facebook pages: the Education Advocacy group, the legal group, and
so it's on a number of our Facebook pages, and I think maybe eventually will be on the website.
Yes. And this is something, just to the viewership in general, we've been putting documents in the Facebook group for the last year, and it's reached a point where that's not functional at all because there's just so many documents there. If you go up under files, you'll see like dozens and dozens and dozens.
And they get lost in the feed.
They do. And so what we're trying to do is really push resources that people need on an ongoing basis over to the website, OntarioAutismCoalition.com.
It's a really good website. Very, very, very good.
Change is coming to it soon, too.
Tara, thank you for that question.
Call me.
I do not think, I know of a couple of other people in a similar situation. And so I'm sitting here beside this really smart lady who teaches law, and then there's a lawyer right over there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it a child's right to have an education?
Yes, it is.
It's their right.
Absolutely.
It's their right.
To have a meaningful public education.
And
we need to talk more in our advocacy about the word meaningful. Because I know for me, and I'm sure for all of the parents out there that are watching and the students, you don't want to go to school to be babysat. You want to send your kid to school just to sit in a corner and
or walk around the gym.
You want your kid there for an education. So it has to be a meaningful education, not just the minimum.
Another really good question. Okay. From Anonymous.
Uh-oh.
Parents that can afford it are opting for private schooling.
Yeah.
Yes, RBTs and BCBAs. What's an RBT? Quickly.
A registered behavior technician.
Okay. And a BCBA is?
Board certified behavior analyst.
Are allowed in, but before going that route, please tell them they shouldn't have to.
Yes.
Our kids have an actual right to an education in their local school, public school. How many people are traveling? How many people are busing their kids several miles to go to school? I understand that in the interim, we do what we need to, but encourage them to file human rights complaints stating their kid's school isn't providing them with an education.
Yeah.
I will find the, okay, yeah. What do you think about that? Like, does everybody need to be filing human rights complaints? Is that a strategy the OAC is going to do?
Listen, the OAC's philosophy is you do what you can when you can. So that means if there's a wide range of ways that we can be advocates. We can advocate just for our child. Sometimes when we have extra energy, we can advocate for other people's kids. Sometimes we can muster the energy to take legal action. I wouldn't recommend trying to combine any two of those three. If you're going to take legal action, understand that it will consume you and it will become the one thing that you are focused on, as it should be. And you need to pour all of your energy into that. Before we go recommending that everybody file human rights claims, and I'm not saying don't, But I want to let you know about one case in particular that's going up before the Human Rights Tribunal this fall. And it's a case that's going to have implications for everybody in this group that has a kid with autism that's going to school. The case is called SKRT, S-K-R-T is the last name of the family, and it's a case against the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board. And the gist of it is something that affects so many of our members. There's a young boy who has been receiving intensive ABA and has been thriving with it. As he enters school, the school is saying he can't do his intensive ABA here. The parents are saying, but we could send our child's registered behavior technician right into the classroom. And the school is saying, nope, absolutely can't do that. We're following PPM 140, rewind if those of you that didn't catch that, but we're doing a kind of ABA. We're sort of delivering ABA, but it's not up to the same standard as it was when this boy was receiving it privately. So the case in a nutshell is to say we need our children to receive meaningful ABA, intensive ABA in school. And so I would urge all of you to take a look at that case, to donate to the family that's had the courage to bring it forward, because it is a massive undertaking. The OAC has applied for and has been granted intervener status in that case. So I'll be attending. I actually had to take the stand at one point.
Ooh, scary. She can do it.
Years of coaching mock trial. I have students that I'm going to get prepped to prep me because they scare the hell out of me.
Hey Beth, can you post your fundraising link?
Beth Skirt here is the courageous mom involved in the case that's bringing it. But if you have a spare dime hidden under a pillow anywhere, please donate it to her case. Because if they are successful in this, the implications for all of our kids are massive, and that's one of the things that I'm going to talk about.
Thank you, Beth. I don't have much more that I want to ask Laura. We've been going on for an hour and 11 minutes, and we had only planned to go for an hour and a half. Well, we can go as long as people want to continue to ask questions. We can keep on going a little bit past that. What I would like to ask Laura is to review the summary of recommendations from the education report that she and a number of other parents put together last spring, and see if you can elaborate just a little bit on. So here's the point. Here we're coming to what is the OAC trying to do? What are we asking for? What are we working towards? And also, what are we in the process of? What is our evolution? We just had a huge win for autism funding with the OAP, Ontario Autism Program. Thanks to you, thanks to this lady over here, thanks to that lady over there, and a whole bunch of other moms and dads. So where are we going? We're clearly, education is our next front. That's for sure. And this recommendation report is really terrific. Please read it. Laura, from your summary of recommendations, one of the bullets is a review of the special education funding formula and accountability for money spent on special education.
Oh, man.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
Hold on to your hats, those of you who are new.
Okay. Special education funding in Ontario is a mess. The reason that your kids can't get the EAs that they need and can't get so many of the services that they need is because the special education funding formula changed years ago. It's changed a couple of times, and not in a way that is based on need. Silly me, when I started off as a mom, I thought that the way special education funding worked is that they counted up all the kids in a school that had special needs, figured out what it would cost to provide those, and then funded that.
That makes sense.
Again, I was looking for logic.
Don't
look for logic. Instead, under the Liberal government, the special education funding formula has been changed to look like, and I'll show you a picture of it later if I can, but it is a mathematical formula that is enough to scare anybody that, didn't really take well to grade 12 calculus. And let's be honest, who did?
Some of our kids,
right? I'm talking about me here.
Charlie, explain this to me one day.
I know, right? Please. But anyway, the formula is a mess. And then, so you start with this formula that calculates how much the Ministry of Education is going to give to school boards. And then they transfer it to school boards. But what data is telling us is that school boards continually spend more than they're given on special education in order to close that gap that's created by the funding formula. So they're already tapped to the maximum. So the formula is messed. I think all of us that were on the writing team for the education report realized early on that it was way above our pay grade to say how we think the special education funding formula should be revised. I don't have that much time to study it. I will say that the Elementary Teachers Federation put out a really good report just last month that goes through the whole history of the funding formula. And there's a section particularly on kids with special needs. They're talking about the whole education funding system, but there's a section of the report on spec ed that's really useful and gives us some good data. But yeah, it's messy. I'd love to see it based on actual need. I really don't know why that's difficult.
What about this notion that a lot of people understand is that I hear that a lot of spec ed money was used to pay the light bill for a lot of school boards. Is that true?
Well, one of the things that's infuriating is that once money gets transferred to school boards, and governments can do something called enveloping. They can say this is earmarked for special education. They can put it in that envelope. But then if the money gets taken out of that envelope and spent on something else, and this sometimes happens, I don't think it's
just spec ed.
It's all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But when money gets used for something other than what it was earmarked for, no one's held accountable for that. And that's the part that I found infuriating as we went through the research.
So the province says, here's the money for spec ed, here you go, school boards.
Yes.
And the school boards say, thank you very much. And they go and they spend it however they spend it. Nobody gets fired, nobody gets reprimanded for that.
The best part, the only people that actually experience consequences are our kids.
Are the kids.
And that's part of what keeps me up at night and drives me, is that there is no accountability built into the education system when it comes to funding, right. When it comes to, like I know as a teacher, I have to read all of my kids' IEPs, but I also know that if I don't, there's no one who comes to check on me to see that I have. Mm-hmm. I'm invited down to guidance to talk about the IEPs, but then I skip that meeting and I go back to my classroom and forget about it completely and don't enforce it, nothing happens to me unless someone complains, unless somebody holds me accountable, unless the principal calls and says, you know what, I just spoke to Karen and your kid is in her class and she's really mad because the kid's supposed to be getting this accommodation and you're not doing that. But the lack of accountability from the top of the system to the bottom is really something that I think makes parents angry.
Yeah. So maybe is that why some politicians will say, what do you mean? We put all of this money into these programs and it's there, we're spending it.
And prepare for, in the next election cycle, the Liberals will talk ad nauseum. That's Latin for until the point that it makes you puke. That's my translation. I feel like that one, Melanie. But anyway, but yeah, the current government will talk on and on and on about how much money they've spent on things, because for them, spending money is an expression of how much they care. It's
love.
Money is love.
Money
For
is
my-
love.
Yeah, for my husband, food is love.
Me too.
But for liberals, apparently spending money is love.
Yeah.
So they'll talk about how much money they've spent. What we have to do is come back and say, okay, but what did you get for those dollars?
Yeah.
And did those dollars actually go and fund the thing that you intended for it to fund?
Can the province change things so that they can impose some accountability? Do they have that power? Who's the Gandalf here?
Well,
See,
here's the biggest problem that I have right now in dealing with the Ministry of Education is, and I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to where they use this phrase. Whenever you complain about your kid's individual case and you send like an angry letter to the Ministry of Education going, you'll get this crap form letter back. I know because I used to work in the minister's office and write these crap letters.
I bet they were great though.
Oh, mine were
Beautiful.
stunning.
Compassionate.
Please rest assured that your complaint will get all of the attention that it deserves. I only used that letter once. But anyway, most of the time you'll get the form letter which says, oh, thank you so much for raising your concern. We did this and we spent this money and we have this program and we did this thing and we did that thing. And 2 pages later, and we're not talking about your thing. Sincerely, bye.
That's right. And you got it off your chest.
Yes. Here's a form letter.
It's off into the ether.
Yes. You may want to look on the resources page at a PowerPoint that I use in my civics class about how to write effective letters that actually get customized responses. But the thing that the Ministry of Education is consistently doing that drives me insane is they wash their hands of anything that school boards do. And whether we're talking about financial accountability for special education dollars or human rights
or
claims
any
involving
any department,
service
frankly.
dogs, or enforcement of human rights policies, the minister will say, and wait for it, she'll say it in the House a bunch of times this fall, the Ministry of Education provides the legislative and regulatory framework for education in the province of Ontario. And we assume and hope that all of our school boards are compliant with the relevant legislation and the Human Rights Act. And it's basically them saying, not our problem, we're the ministry, that's the boards. Well, there's 72 different school boards in Ontario. Mm-hmm. We can't have 72 different interpretations of, the Human Rights Act when it comes to service dogs or accommodating kids with autism. So that's why one of the partners that we joined with is the Alliance for the Ontarians with Disabilities Act.
So I'm going to stop her because I want to move on to the next bullet.
And they're called for an education accessibility standard, which is one of the other bullets right there.
That's right. That's why I'm moving on. Okay, so your next bullet, I've just got 3 more.
Okay.
I hope everybody's okay. I hope you're following all this. Remember, you can watch it, rewind it, skip my parts, and go right to what the smart things that Laura says. The next bullet on the summary of recommendations from our education, our recommendation report. Direct funding to provide more training and supports for teachers, EAs, and other staff who work with students with autism spectrum disorders, ASD. Yeah.
One thing that came out in the writing process is that a lot of you as members of the OAC are asking the same questions as those of us on the leadership team, which is, if somebody is authorized by the Ministry of Children and Youth Services to sit in a room like this and provide one-on-one intervention with a kid in the form of ABA therapy, and that person is good enough to submit pay requests to the Ministry of Children and Youth Services, why can that person not walk from this house across the street and into a school and sit down and do the same exact thing there? Why is somebody who works for one ministry not good enough for another ministry? And so
this happens with daycares that are
in schools. Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
You'll have your
rules.
Melanie, you can attest to that.
Yeah.
You'll have your ABA folks come to the daycare and work with your child.
Yeah.
But when they're moving into kindergarten, there's just no church and state here. You know, there's separation complete, right?
The word in
the
the
same room.
In the same room.
same room.
Yeah.
In the same
The
room.
bell, because 3 o'clock, it's now a daycare room, and ABA can come in.
God, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So the word
Did you
in
hear that?
government's-
3 o'clock, school's over,
The room
daycare
changes.
starts, the room changes, then ABA can come in.
Crazy. No, the word for this kind of thinking in government is silos. And when you think of like big grain silos, so it's like education is one big silo, and the Ministry of Children and Youth Services is another big silo, and they don't talk to each other. And it's like, well, we've got all of our programs in here. We don't want to talk about your programs. And we're trying to get them to tear that wall
Please
down.
talk to each other, yes.
It's starting.
Yeah.
I can say that it's starting.
Thank you,
So-
Laura. It's starting.
What
Thank
we've
you, Laura.
no, not just me, please.
I know not
There's-
just you.
no.
I know,
I-
but come on. We all know that you are a huge part of this, and we are grateful.
well,
Yes?
thank
Yes.
you. I am a part of it. Yes.
Huge.
But the thing that we're trying to do is to say, look, as a short-term measure, we really think that registered behavior technicians should be able to enter schools. The medium to long-term goal would be if we could get education assistants that had that 40 hours of basic training that RBTs get, so that they could deliver it as well. And we want school boards to hire BCBAs to look at the data that's collected, and program accordingly. That basically we want to like tear down that wall.
Tear down that
Between-
Tear down that wall!
I knew I was
right?
going to set you
Yes.
off. I knew I was.
As the
Anyway.
great Ronald Reagan once said. Yes.
But
Next bullet. Oh.
Did you just say the great
Well,
Ronald
I
Reagan?
didn't mean it. I just was being a goofball. But he did say that.
All right.
Didn't he say that, Mr.
He did.
Yeah,
He did.
tear down that wall.
You did.
Melanie,
Can
hop
I
in.
ask her? I
Okay.
just want to ask Laura one question because
Okay,
I've had
sure.
principals say this to me. But schools provide education, not therapy,
Oh, Lord.
right? So what do you say to parents when principals say that to them?
I think the best way to answer that is to videotape an ABA session with your kid and play them 30 seconds of it and say, this is what the therapy that you're talking about looks like. Because let's be honest, when a kid is 5, 6, 7 years old and they're doing intensive ABA, if you're an outsider looking in on that, it looks a lot like school. It really looks a lot like school.
And they try very hard to make it look like school.
So, I mean, here's the irony. If your kid needed insulin during the day, then the school would have to, if the kid couldn't do it themselves, the school would have to come up with a way to administer that insulin. If your kid requires medication or a puffer because they have asthma, the school can do all of those things. But ABA doesn't come in a pill yet, which is why the Ministry of
ABA
Education
doesn't come in a pill yet. We're going to put that on our website.
Yeah. And I mean, this is something that I've said to school professionals all the time. Like, if I told you that he just needed, this pill for half an hour, to take it in a room over here, would you do it? Sure. But ABA is therapy, and it is also teaching. And one of the things that we can do in the autism community to broaden understanding is to let people know that ABA is not just for autism. This may come as a shocker to a lot of people, but applied behavioral analysis is used with victims of brain injury.
Mhm.
It's used with senior citizens.
Mhm.
It's used in corrections. And let's be honest, it's used in every marriage. Every marriage ever.
Not mine.
Honey, if you make the dinner, I'll do the dishes. If you cut the lawn, I'll give you a beer. If you'll stop talking, no, that's a different
No,
program.
okay.
But I think a big thing that we have to do is just raise awareness about what ABA is.
Yeah.
And that Minister of Education that I met with all those years ago, who was like, no, it's therapy. We can't do therapy in schools. Okay, well, what about all those mental health initiatives that you're doing? Because it looks kind of therapeutic to me.
Yeah.
And our school allowed therapy dogs in for anxiety relief. And your guidance counselors provide some therapy and
2 more bullets.
walls.
Okay?
Yep.
So our last summary, from our summary of recommendations, a review of the implementation of Policy Program Memorandum PPM 140.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we want to see happen to PPM 140?
We want it to have teeth, or we want it to be scrapped completely and rewritten and updated.
Good. Let's just leave it at that.
That's it.
Okay, last one. An investigation into the feasibility of an autism demonstration school.
So this came from a bunch of people who noticed that we have, we almost lost them, but we have some amazing provincial schools for students that are deaf and hard of hearing, who are blind and low vision, and kids that have severe learning disabilities. And some of these schools are schools where the kids can go and live in. Some of them are schools where they go home at the end of the day. But it is a specialized school only for kids with that exceptionality, with teachers that only work with those types of kids. And when it's called a demonstration school, here's the best part. It means that other teachers that want to learn how to teach those kids can come in and observe and take best practices back to their school. So demonstration schools, awesome. The demonstration schools in this province almost got chopped a couple of years ago. To their credit, the teachers and the parents and the students rose up in rebellion and did a great publicity campaign, and they managed to save their schools. So we support those schools, and we want to kind of stick our hand up and go, hey, us too. Given the number of kids that are diagnosed with autism,
yes.
We should have one of those.
Imagine what people could learn. So that's all I have for the questions. I skipped a few because Laura tackled many of them. No, thank you for. Oh boy, Laura, I just can't believe you're on this planet. I really can't.
Yeah.
Oh, I could let her go on and on, but I won't because we
actually. There's a couple of last things I got.
There's a couple of last things, but we hit 1 hour and 30 minutes.
Okay, so we're gonna stop soon.
We're gonna stop soon, but if you had a burning question, type it again so Melanie can grab it off the feed. Laura will try. Yeah, Laura will try to answer them or provide a resource for you to figure it out for yourself. But Laura, what did you want to say?
So I'm gonna say 3 things. One is good luck this year.
Good luck.
And don't give up. And come back into this group anytime you've got a question. It may not be me or Karen or Melanie that gets to answer it. You know what, I think it's even better sometimes when it's just other people in this big family that we've created here. But we will help each other. Those of us on the executive are really here to help raise systemic issues. And so that leads me to point number 2. I want to know not just your individual situations, but I want to know patterns. So that's why we put out a huge survey. The OAC Education Survey is one of the best things that you can do to help the OAC advocate for you and your kid. The stats that I'm seeing come in so far indicate that it takes about half an hour to complete, which is a lengthy investment, but let's face it, some of us spend half an hour in our Facebook feed. No problem. So,
and we want to be thorough.
We do. We have a lot of questions for you. We have questions about your kid's placement, your communication with your EA, whether you were able to get anybody into the classroom delivering intensive ABA, restraints, exclusion, all of that. So there's a ton of data that we're trying to capture so that we can take it to the Ministry of Education. And
thank you to
Tara
advocate. For helping with that.
Yes.
I'm told that your input was really helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Tara.
Absolutely. And all of the writers of the education report, everybody that proofread it.
Nice work, everybody.
The last thing that I want to say is we're in an election cycle. All right. The next provincial election is going to happen on June, I think, 7th. Of next year. Watch now as the sitting government throws money and announcements at anything that moves. But we have to, as an organization, have some really important conversations about the next provincial election. We need to evaluate the platforms of the parties that are seeking election. But we also need to be politically engaged. The OAC is officially nonpartisan. We're not going to tell you vote for one party or another. There are some specific candidates that we like in all parties.
All parties.
At this point.
Yeah, full disclosure here too. Like Laura and I couldn't be more different in terms of our political flavor.
Well, our political background
is different.
Our
Yeah.
political presence is a little more closely aligned.
And the OAC doesn't care who's in government. We will advocate regardless. We'll advocate with governments who are working with us. We'll advocate when governments are working against us. That's what nonpartisan means. We don't give a fig, but we do give a fig if they do the right thing or don't. Exactly. Right?
But get involved. If there's a candidate that you like, that you think gets autism, then get to be that person's best friend. Get involved in their campaign. Talk about your kid. Make sure they're informed. And we'll talk more later about election strategy as we get closer to it. But this is a big year, and our focus right now is on two things. Bruce is still continuing to lead the charge for a new and improved Ontario Autism program, and I see how hard he's working on that, and the implementation committee meetings are going full force. And then the second campaign that we're running is Autism Doesn't End at School. Please, if you see something that you think is worth sharing, and you want to share it with us on social media, we're on Twitter. Did you know that? @ONT Autism. Use the hashtag Autism Doesn't End at School, Autism Doesn't End at 5. Visit our website. You're here on Facebook almost all the time.
So we're coming to the end here, and please join.
Yes.
Please visit our website. Please join.
Become a member.
It's one thing to be on Facebook. That's great. But the Facebook is just a virtual bulletin board where you share thoughts and ideas. Membership is a way to connect with us directly, share your story, and as Laura alluded to, or not alluded to, as she said, we need data. We need to know who are you? Where are you? How's it going? How's it not going? Let's say we're done, but we will happily address individual comments and questions as long as people want to stay. And thank you, Laura. Thank you, OAC. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, husband Tony, for setting up this live feed. And good luck, everybody. We really wish you the best. We really are all in this together. And our views are our own, sort of, but we do our best, right? We do our best to work together. We may have come from a different point of view, a different slant, but this is all about the kids and the families. Yeah. So, any good questions, Melanie? Good night. Anybody wants to sign off? They're all good questions, but
unfortunately, we've had some technical difficulties.
Oh, we've had technical difficulties. Okay.
And the comments aren't coming through now. So,
are there things that you want to scroll back to? We're seeing. You're welcome, Angela. You're very welcome.
Wow. All right, everybody.
I'm not getting this.
We're not. Oh, okay.
Good night. We're gonna try to log off here. You may get to hear us chatter for a little while. It's not that interesting.
Yes, and this time we hope it will save. Oh, good. Our tech guy, Mr. Handsome's coming. Karen, you also have to mention the amazing Bruce McIntosh.
Yes.
If you like. If you want.
Yeah. He's my husband.
Okay,
married 24 years yesterday.
24 years yesterday.
Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank
Congratulations.
You. Thank you.
All right. Live long and prosper.